So, an Iranian vessel is struck in the Caspian Sea. Iran blames Ukraine, threatens retaliation, claims Israel was behind the attack. At the same time, Russian drones are flying into Romanian airspace, NATO airspace. 3 drones struck down 3 days. And while all of that is happening, President Trump is warning China and Russia do not help Iran as tensions in the Middle East rise extremely dangerous. These are not just isolated events in small pockets of the world. Nations, alliances, and battle lines are beginning to overlap. So, are we watching separate conflicts begin to merge into one large one? Hey everyone, it's Dina Calmetta here. And today we're going to break down these headlines, examine what they mean, and what they have to do with prophecy. President Trump warned China and Russia on Friday not to assist Iran as he is reportedly weighing options to escalate strikes. Seemingly addressing reports that China and Russia have been assisting Iran with drones, weapons, and satellites, Trump says that the Chinese president and the Russian president promised they would not sell weapons to the Islamic Republic, reiterating their commitment to the president. The president wrote, President Xi, at our recent meeting in Beijing, China, told me he would not, under any circumstances, give or sell weapons to the Islamic Republic of Iran. And that statement included Chinese companies. Considering our relationship, I take him at his word. And besides, I am doing him big favors also. Likewise, President Putin, despite the horrible war going on in Ukraine, the relationship remains as it does with President Zelensky, told me that he would not sell weapons to Iran. He understands that I do not sell weapons to Ukraine, but to NATO countries. They pay full price, and how those weapons are distributed, I have no idea. And that was reported by Just the News. So a very clear warning and understanding between the President of the United States, Russia, and China. Now, to go with that, let's talk about this report from the Jerusalem Post. Just really quick, the Ukrainian President, Zelensky, has accused Russia of assisting the Iranian regime on July 25th. It is not the first time that the Russian-Iran partnership has been highlighted. Russia and Iran, and I've reported this before, have been working together for decades. However, Ukraine's decision to highlight the relationship comes as Iran threatened Ukraine with potential missile strikes in response to it attacking an Iranian ship in the Caspian Sea. So what happened? Well, the Times of Israel is reporting now that Iran's foreign minister on Sunday vowed to respond against Ukraine for a fatal attack in the Caspian Sea that the minister claimed was carried out at Israel's behest. The Ukrainian president, whose country has faced swarms of Iranian-designed drones since Russia invaded it in 2022, said on Saturday that Kyiv struck vessels used in military cargo shipments involving Iran in the Caspian Sea. Channel 12 later reported that the Ukrainian ambassador to Israel informed him that the vessels were transporting Iranian weapons to Russia to aid in its war on Ukraine. So very sticky, hairy situation. But Express News is reporting that an Iranian MP has threatened military action against Ukraine as Zelensky is meeting with President Trump in the U.S. today. The threat comes in response to what Iran claims was a Ukrainian attack, as I mentioned, on an Iranian merchant vessel in the Caspian Sea. The Iranian politician, a member of Iran's National Security and Foreign Policy Committee, told Russian state news agency RIA that we responded through diplomatic channels, issued an ultimatum, but a military response will certainly follow. He also claimed that Iran's armed forces had already put a military response against Kyiv on the agenda. These two wars are becoming intertwined now. The Ukrainian war and the Middle East war with Iran. And with that said, here are just a few other headlines as it pertains to the Middle East. The Pentagon reports more than 600 Iranian war casualties in their database update. Senior Iranian source says that Iran will halt attacks on the U.S. as long as the U.S. holds its fire. And the United States has held its fire, but Iran says that the conflict will spread geographically if the United States renews strikes. Trump wants to give Iran some space as he weighs escalation, but Israel is said to believe he'll soon be forced to escalate the war with Iran. Mike Waltz dismisses concerns over depleted U.S. weapon stockpile. Now, we've been hearing a lot about this in the last couple of days, that we're apparently running out of weapons. But President Trump has denied these concerns, saying that we have far more than what we need. The Red Sea shipping has slowed after Houthi attacks on Saudi Arabia. So here we go. again, expanding. But here is a very interesting piece. President Trump said Israel would not be around anymore had he not been elected, arguing that Iran would otherwise have obtained and used a nuclear weapon against Israel. He told reporters on Air Force One, frankly, we're being very nice to a lot of countries that would not survive without us. And you know who wouldn't survive without us? Israel. Bibi's coming. He'll tell you. Now, this came ahead of the leaders' 8th meeting since Trump took office last year. Netanyahu said ahead of the talk that he would first and foremost be about Iran, but all issues will be discussed. So he's meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu this week, as well as President Zelensky. But in addition to that, Netanyahu will also raise concerns about Turkey asking to buy the F-35 fighter jets from the U.S., as he believes it will lessen Israel's military advantage over other countries in the region. And of course, we cannot forget that the Democrats are blasting Trump due to the Saudi nuclear deal, as GOP has touted regional alliance. Republicans stress regional partnership, while Democrats argue uranium enrichment could provoke others to seek weapons. So this is the problem about this war, the threat of it expanding. And it's always been that from the very beginning. And unfortunately, we're in a very precarious situation where that is now a real possibility. Now, hopefully cooler heads will prevail, and we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. But as far as Iran goes, she isn't going anywhere. Persia is mentioned in the book of Ezekiel in the Gog and Magog war, where she joins alliances with Russia and Turkey as well as other nations, and they try and invade Israel, in which God steps in and defends Israel, which leads me to my next topic. I want to address really quick what President Trump said in regards to Israel not surviving unless he was elected into office. Now, I don't agree with that statement, and if you are a believer in Christ, you wouldn't agree either. Because number one, President Trump, with all due respect, okay, he's done a lot of good things for Israel and a lot of good things for America, and I do pray for the man. But he is wrong here, because he wouldn't be in that seat in that White House if God had not raised him up. Because God raises up kings and he brings down kings. And number one, America did not create Israel, nor did she build Israel. That was God. Number two, Israel does not need America. And number three, God himself, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, he will be the one that will defend Israel. Because even now in Israel's current state, Israel is still the apple of God's eye. And those that bless Israel will be blessed, and those that curse Israel will be cursed. And God will defend Israel, because eventually Jesus is going to rule from Jerusalem. So in this instance, the president's wrong. He shouldn't have said that. But I digress. I just wanted to get that off my chest. Let's move along and talk about what's happening in Romania. The Moscow Times is reporting that a Romanian F-16 fighter jet pilot shot down a Russian drone over the Black Sea on Sunday, the latest in a series of breaches of NATO members' airspace that the president of Romania called inadmissible and intolerable. Romania shares a 400-mile land border with Ukraine, and Russian drones have repeatedly violated its airspace during the more than 4-year Ukrainian war. Moscow is now stepping up attacks on Ukrainian ports across the river. Romania had not destroyed any of the drones until Friday, when a Romanian pilot was able to safely bring one down in an uninhabited area. It has now shot down 3 drones in as many as days. But the Romanian president went on to say that it's inadmissible and intolerable for the Russian Federation to continue violating Romania's airspace, which is at the same time NATO airspace and European Union airspace. Such actions are unacceptable, and we treat them with the utmost seriousness alongside our allies. Moscow made no immediate public comment on the incidents. NATO said additionally details of Sunday's incidents were under investigation. But it doesn't stop there. What else has Russia been up to? Well, it's being reported that satellite imagery shows Russian missile systems mysteriously vanishing from the Arctic as new barracks and depots rise near Finland and Norway. The satellite imagery suggests that Russia has removed a significant number of air defense systems from positions in its Arctic region. Analysts believe some of those defenses may have been redeployed to protect Russian cities, oil refineries, and military facilities from Ukraine's drone campaign. But Russia is not abandoning the Arctic. At the same time, Moscow is constructing new barracks, ammunition depots, and military facilities closer to Finland and Norway, both NATO nations. One expanded base near the Finnish and Norwegian borders could eventually accommodate as many as 17,000 troops. Finland's army commander has warned that Russian forces positioned near Finland could eventually increase from approximately 20,000 to as many as 80,000. Those troops are not stationed there today because Russia remains heavily committed to the war in Ukraine. But the construction gives Moscow the ability to move larger forces towards NATO's northern border once the conflict slows, freezes, or ends. The concern is that Russia may be accepting greater vulnerability in parts of the Arctic today while preparing the infrastructure it would need for a future confrontation. Fox News is reporting that days after NATO allies committed tens of billions of dollars to new air and missile defenses, the alliance's top transformation commander warned that the West must fundamentally redesign its weapons and industrial base to withstand attacks on the scale now being demonstrated in Ukraine and the Middle East. NATO's Supreme Allied Commander said today the math is not in favor of the West. The summit produced commitments to acquire 900 Patriot missiles and invest more than $40 billion in counter-drone capabilities throughout 5 years. But the commander argued that simply buying more of the West's existing weapons will not solve the underlying problem. Russia's nightly barrages against Ukraine have exposed an air defense model designed for smaller numbers of incoming threats. The U.S.-Iranian conflict has simultaneously intensified demand for the high-end interceptors needed to defeat ballistic missiles, including Patriots and Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, or the THAAD, that can quickly be replaced. He said there's no way to produce 50,000 Patriots a year. We don't have the supply chain, and it's not worth doing that given the cost of the weapon. Instead, he said that NATO needs a layered mix of defenses, cheaper weapons that can be mass-produced to counter waves of drones while preserving advanced interceptors for ballistic missiles and other sophisticated threats. NATO is definitely preparing an end-game scenario in case Russia does try to invade any NATO country. So definitely some very interesting news today, and perhaps even prophetic. We are absolutely in the season of wars and rumors of wars. And as always, I'll continue to keep you updated. But I would like to bring you one last report, and this is in regards to what happened in New York City. And perhaps you have already heard about it. But apparently the New York mayor, when they were creating a map of New York City, they seem to have left off, or he's being accused of leaving off a couple of immigrant neighborhoods, one being the Jewish neighborhood and the other Little Italy. And let me tell you, oh boy, with the responses. A New York City neighborhood passport created by the city's official marketing group and available at libraries in the Big Apple for tourists has been criticized after it excluded Jews from a map of the city's immigrant neighborhoods. The map identifies 30 neighborhoods associated with New York's thriving international communities and cultures, including Little Palestine, Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, Little Egypt and Astoria, Queens, Little Pakistan and New Kirk Plaza, Brooklyn, and multiple Chinatowns. However, the graphic, which is sourced from the New York City Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, does not note any Jewish neighborhoods, though the Immigrant Affairs Office also doesn't include official posters for Little Palestine or Little Egypt. The lack of depiction of Jewish neighborhoods, as well as Irish and Italian ones, has drawn criticism from local community members. Now, in the meantime, Fox News is reporting that the Italian American Civil Rights League said that Mondami wants to erase Italian Americans. First, he denied our permit for Unity Day 2026. Now he is excluding Little Italy as a recognized location altogether on the map. Italian Americans built New York City. We stand against communists. The IACRL president, Mike Crispy, said in a press release that Mondami City Hall can find room for every fashionable, progressive contingency, but somehow it cannot find Little Italy.
Our culture is good enough for their photo ops. Our food is good enough for their fundraisers, and our neighborhoods are good enough for tourism dollars. But when it comes time to recognize Italian Americans, they erase us. Now, more than 4 million Italians immigrated to the United States between the 1880s and 1924. A roughly one-third settled in New York City, helping make Italians the city's largest immigrant community in the early 20th century. This is according to the Library of Congress. Crispy said that Little Italy is sacred ground. It is where Italian immigrants came with nothing, worked like HE double hockey sticks, opened shops, raised families, built churches, fed the city, and helped make New York what it is.
So, do you think he ruffled any feathers in New York? Absolutely. And as always, if anything comes of it, I will definitely let you know. But I just thought to share that piece with you guys today. And I'd love to hear your comments. So please do tell me what you guys think about the report today. I love reading your comments. And when you have some time, come and visit us on our social media pages as well as our website. But thank you, everybody, for watching. And until next time, God bless and stay safe.